Okay, today we are going to be talking about they, and if you don't know who they are, I think we all know who we are talking about. And if you still don't know the rhyme, then let me just say it with insert brackets, the goyim know. Okay, enough with those jokes now, let's get serious then. Greater Israel planned. Now, I've made videos on Israel and I've made videos on Zionism, Judaism, and the situation in the Middle East. Okay, so Protocols of Zion here. What is Israel's plans in the Middle East? So obviously, if you don't know what the Protocols of Zion is, it's a bit like George Orwell's 1984. You have those. It's about a bunch of rabbis, sitting in a dark room by the candlelight with their earlocks, hair wigs, sitting at a table, just rubbing their hands by the moonlight of how they're gonna control the world, So yeah, and obviously a lot of Jews, Zionists, will get angry and say, "Oh, you're just a conspiracy theorist," So yeah, but what is Israel's plan? Okay, there's not going to be peace in the Middle East until they achieve their promised land. Now, we call Islam, ISIS fundamentalists, extremists, but no one bats an eye for Israel. That's because a lot of Hasbra trolls, a lot of Mossad agents, this is what they do. They go on the internet, they infiltrate the internet, they pretend to be atheists, so they could criticize Christianity and Islam, but not their Zionism, even though Zionism is an Abrahamic religion and just the same. Just look at people like Sam Harris, he is an atheist, and Bill Maher, another Zionist who speaks out against Christianity and Islam, very pro-atheist, but will never say anything against his Judaism. Another thing these Hasbra trolls like to do is they like to go into the Facebook comment section, and they like to change their profile pictures into like Nigerians and pretend they're Africans, so it looks like Israel is getting worldwide support when we all know it's Mossad agents in a warm office trying to garner up international support for Israel by using the internet. That's what they're called, the Hasbra, and they get paid by the Israeli government to do this. And a question, if you're a Hasbra watching this, if your country is so great, then why are you being paid by your government to say it's great? So anyways, back to Greater Israel. In the Talmud, in the Torah, it says the Holy Land is not just that small strip of land, but it stretches all the way from the former Assyrian Empire, which is the Tigris, to the Nile. So how are they going to achieve that with Hezbollah in Lebanon, the open anarchy in Syria, and Iran's proxies all around the Middle East? Who knows? But what I do know is that what they're doing basically is their plan is basically, they get their shock troops, they get their useful idiots, United States of America, to take out the surrounding countries, turn them into anarchy, and then you say, oh, why would Israel want anarchy on its borders? Because Israel knows that it can beat insurgents. Israel fears strong countries with their own military and their own air force. They don't fear countries under collapse and under anarchy and under amateur jihadis that don't know what the hell they're doing, that don't have an air force. Sorry, my battery's a bit low there. So they don't fear that because they've got plenty of walls there, but they will deny walls being built in the United States. So that's why they want, and obviously they prop up ISIS so they can get a world response into bombing the Middle East, and so they create these boogeymen. It's a bit like in the West how they create these alt-right white supremacists, you know, like all the alt-right, they're all Jews, you know, Ben Shapiro, Milo Yiannopoulos, Rabbi Media, Ezra Levant. If they're not Jews, then they're working for the Jews, and it's not because the Jews love the alt-right or white people, it's just that they're trying to use them as a sledgehammer against us. Garb wearing, false flag waving, lipstick service on a pig, but the pig is false flag waving under wolf's clothing. And they're trying to prop up the alt-right to scare ethnic minorities into communism. So they are controlling the alt-right and they are controlling cultural Marxism. So don't be fooled by this. A lot of black communists, oh, white people control the banks, white people cause all the wars, white people, man, it's the white man. White man control all the TV, the Hollywood, and I'm not gonna lie, I used to think like that as well. And the white people will be like, oh, these refugees, these immigrants, oh, black on black crime, the Muslims are gonna come and they're gonna invade us, and oh, we have to fight them over there, or they're gonna come over and fight us over here, so we have to go over there and fight them, you know? So, yeah. And you see how all this creates diversion from Israel. Christians and Muslims turning on each other creates diversion from Israel. It's all to prevent the Goyim from knowing. So they'll get these. So what know how I say they prop up white supremacy in the West to scare minorities into communism? They also prop up ISIS and Islamic extremists in the Middle East to scare white countries that ISIS is about to invade, so then the West then responds by bombing the Middle East, and obviously by bombing the Middle East by funding ISIS, it scares a shit ton of Syrians to leave, and then they leave, it causes population, and then once they leave, they won't want them to come to Israel, but to go into Europe. Open borders for Europe, but not open borders for Israel. Not open borders for Saudi Arabia either. So they'll all go into Europe, and then they'll say to the Europeans, oh, look, these Syrians are coming, they're invading, even though the Syrians didn't want to leave their country anyway. It'd be no advantage for the Syrian government for Syrians to leave because they need people there to pay taxes, to manage the infrastructure, to build all the electrical grids. So by having people leaving, it's not going to make sense. It's just going to make it desolate and empty. And obviously it's a Wahhabist plan to build new countries on top of new countries. You bomb countries into pieces of dirt. It makes the land so much cheaper. You buy up the land and you build up these mega cities in which your oil pipelines can run through easier. So that's why Saudi Arabia and Israel are two twins of the same evil. So the Israelis will say, look, oh my god, look at these Muslims are coming, they're going to invade you, get ready, even though they're funding the Islamic extremists. And then there's going to be this huge race war in Europe between Muslims and Christians, between brown people and white people, Middle Eastern people and European people. And while that war is happening in Europe, no one's going to pay attention to the Middle East, no one's going to pay attention to Saudi Arabia building these megacities, these oil pipelines. No one's going to pay attention to Israel's expansionism. because there'll be a huge civil war, a huge race war in Europe, divide and rule. So, and with all the Syrians gone and all the land being empty, Israel can invade the countries easier, and then Israel's just gonna grow, it's just gonna get bigger because they just bomb the people, and they kick them out, and then they demand that Europe take them, but then tell Europeans that they're a threat at the same time by infiltrating the alt-right, but they're also infiltrating the Islamic extremism. Because it's funny how Israel is a great ally of Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia is funding these radical Sunni groups as a proxy against Iran. So it's all to encircle Iran. And like I said, with the refugees, it causes the rise in populism. Populism causes a rise in cultural Marxism. You have Antifa, and you have the alt-right fighting each other, divide and rule, diversion from Israel. Israel grows, Israel expands, Israel gets cheap land, because there's no people living there. Divide and rule, divide and conquer, and then obviously Israel will unfortunately control the world, and they will build their third temple. So this is just all stuff to be wary of. So yeah, and it's funny now that their plans are not working. The so-called ISIS Israel claims to be fighting are all hugged up to the Israeli border because they're totally getting their asses kicked by the Syrian army. And it's also funny how ISIS are killing Israel's enemies for them, like Hezbollah and Hamas. And yeah, so it's weird. And now that America is leaving with Trump's America First policy, the Israelis are now using the Saudi Arabians and the Sunni Islamic Alliance, the Islamic NATO, as their new shock troops to prolong their survival and to prolong the protocols of the Elders of Zion. So tell me what you think about this, and they might shut this one down. Oy vey, they'll be rubbing their hands, thumbing this down. There'll be a lot of Hasbara watching this, so yeah. But anyways, I'll see you in the next one. Hopefully this doesn't happen. I don't want a race war to happen. I don't want to fight my fellow European Christian brothers just to appease Jewish warmongering. But if the whites are going to get fooled by this, then if the white people are going to fall for this and attack me, I'm going to have to attack them back, because they're just sledgehammers to Israel, and I'm going to have to break the white hammer in order to break the rabbi throwing that white hammer at me. So hopefully it doesn't happen. We don't see race war in Europe. We don't see chaos in Europe. We know who's controlling it. They've done it throughout history. Protocols of the Elders of Zion. See you in the next one. Peace.